Just impressive to watch his unique work ethic and what he's been able to do to get himself in the position to come back and play in the time span that he's been able to do it. It's just a credit to him and all the people around him that have helped him get there, and they've done a great job, and he's put in the work.
How does the ball look coming out of his hands?
It looks great. Looks great. You know, it's like anything else, coming back in, getting back in his rhythm. But he's able to make all the throws, and he's done a great job doing it today. And each day has been better than the one before. So he's been great.
This was always kind of the optimistic goal of having him back this week. But how surprised you with that serious of an injury to be back on the practice field less than a month?
Yeah, I think if I hadn't gotten to know Russ so well over the last several months, I'd be surprised. But it's something that he fully expected, and because of his belief and his positive energy going into this thing, taking a negative situation and spinning it around, kind of led us all to believe, all right, he'll be back when he says he's going to be back, and here he is.
D. Eskridge also back on the field this week.
Yep.
How has he looked to you, and how excited do you have him back after this long absence?
Yeah, no, I'm excited for him, first and foremost, because I know he's had a few bumps in the road in his rookie year and had some bad luck with some injury things, and all he wants to do is be out on the field and working, and he's done a great job just like he did throughout some of the time he missed during training camp, where he's come in great shape, come back from all of the stuff that he had to do to get right and get ready to go, and back out here running and looking fast as ever.
What do you see out of that Packers defense? The numbers seem really good. They've missed some key guys, but they seem to be producing really well.
Yeah, Joe Barry's done an excellent job getting those guys, keeping everything in front of them, especially as of late, and, they make you earn everything. They do a great job playing on the edge, playing hard, playing physical. Those guys really get after it, and then the DBs, playing in their coverage principles, they're doing a great job of just not turning people free and making you earn every yard.
You guys did your self-assessing over the bye week. What are some areas that you targeted you guys want to improve in the second half of the season?
Sure. I think, first and foremost will be improving on third down. It's something that we've talked about and emphasized, and got to continue to emphasize, and starting with the communication and being on point with that, and then, doing a great job receivers getting open in those one-on-one matchups. I know Tyler had a few instances this past 2 weeks ago, I guess now, against Jacksonville, where doing a great job getting open versus that tight man-to-man coverage. And for us, just really to continue to progress as an offense in those third downs, so we're extending drives, extending the amount of plays we're getting within the games, and having that play complementary football to how explosive we've been able to be when we're on track and we're moving the ball on first and second down. And then the second thing would be really eliminating those negative plays, so we can stay on schedule, stay on track, stay out of those third and longs, and it continues to be a point of emphasis, and just having that bye week chance to look back at it and reassess where we're at, just continuing on the to be on the right track of getting better in those areas will help us as an offense as a whole.
Some of those areas tie into this, but when you see time of possession being worst in the league at this stage of the season, how do you think you got to that point? Like, what are the aspects that stand out to you as to why you guys haven't been able to hold the ball longer offensively and maybe sustain drives? What do you take out of that?
Yeah, I think it's really been a combination of the two things. We've had some drives that have been super explosive, where we've had some of these big plays, whether it's an 84-yard touchdown or some of these 60-yarders. So those are happening quick, and eliminating that time of possession right there, and then coming back to the third down thing, where we need to extend those drives and eliminate any chance of 3 and outs or any of those chances where we're getting off the field too quickly, and an area where we can continue to improve on.
How have you felt about the usage of the tight ends, or how you've been able to get the tight ends involved so far?
Yeah, I think those guys, they've done a great job. A lot of the dirty work behind the scenes, whether they're chips and protections or they're helping us in the run game, have done a great job in that area. And then, like anything else, would love to see them have the ball come their way a few more times, depending on which way the coverage contours go. So just, again, good thing to look at over the off week time to self-scout, where's the ball going, and making sure those guys are working hard, and we're trying to keep those guys involved in the pass game, just like we're trying to get everyone involved.
And what if you get Chris Carson back as well this week? What kind of difference can he make for you?
Yeah, I think those other guys have done a nice job stepping up, and I know Chris has been chomping at the bit to get back out there and get rolling. And he's another guy, just like with Eskridge off, or with Russell being out with injuries. He's continued to keep himself in excellent shape and ready to go. And hopefully it's this week when his body's ready to roll and feeling right. He adds that physical presence at that running back spot, finishing runs, and really that attitude player for the offense.
Shane, when we've seen quarterbacks come back from injury before, sometimes you might see, maybe if it's a leg injury, a guy not want to step up into the pocket or such and kind of compensate with that. Do you have to keep an eye out in case Russell's maybe short-arming stuff to let him know and kind of work through that, and what do you kind of expect from him on that front as he works back into things here?
Yeah, I think because he knows he can do everything to his fullest capabilities right there. And I know Austin Davis has been talking with him, and then just coming back to the fundamentals and making sure, like anyone else, he's been away from practice for a little bit of time just due to the circumstances. So just remind himself in game, just coming back to the fundamentals and with using great technique, playing with a great base, and all the things that he's done throughout his career. But just those constant reminders, and he does the best job in the world of that self-talk, that constant reminders of not just the plays, but what technique he's using, so he's going into every series, maximizing his ability.
The sack rates stay pretty similar whether it was Gino or Russ. What do you attribute that to?
Really coming down to some of those third downs where we got to do a great job, whether it's the third downs or some of those known passing situations. Coming back to all 11, right? Each sack we've gone through them each week, and sometimes they're from a communication standpoint we got to be better there. Other times, there's times within games where you need to get just take the dirt, take the incompletion there, and then the receivers getting open in the timing and rhythm of the plays. So just doing a great job as a whole and eliminating those plays. And then especially in the early downs, if there is a chance where a shot's taken, hey, let's go ahead and take a check down, move on, and play the next down.
We know that a defense is going to play top down, not going to take away the explosive play. It's probably how the Rams are doing. The Packers are probably going to do. You go into it, you and Russ, knowing that you got to be a little bit more patient, wait for those shots.
Yeah, I think a lot of the defenses around the league, you've seen it go up. Not just with the Rams, not just with the Packers, but just around the league, seeing a lot of shell coverage and defenses making you earn every yard, and you got to take your shots and take your opportunities when they present themselves, but also staying in that efficient mindset where you're moving the ball down the field and not getting bored with taking completions or taking positive runs, and then when those opportunities present themselves, make sure we're ready to attack.
To be patient in that way?
It can be because you want to, everyone wants to have, great, long explosive touchdowns every single snap. I mean, that would be the ultimate goal as an offense. But, the thing is, the mindset as our offense continues to grow is, again, I keep referring back to being an efficient offense, and having those drives where we can sustain some of those 10, 12, 13 play touchdown drives and not solely rely on explosive plays to get there.
How have you seen Jacob Eason progress in the time you've had him?
Yeah, he's done a great job now that he's been here for more than that first week where he's kind of fired right in the mix and able to really grasp the terminology, doing a great job with him and Gino when they mix and match some of the show team reps that they get, and then it's always going to be limited with the amount of true reps in our offense that you get this time of the year in that backup quarterback role like he's in right now. But he's done a great job absorbing the offense, and now that he knows kind of what's going on, what all the calls are, you can see his talent starting to really show.
Chris coming back and Alex is playing, what does that mean for Rashad?
Really for all those running backs right here, we're waiting and seeing exactly what's going to happen on game day there. But I know like Chad Morton's done a great job all season long, just like any of our other positions and guys have been in or out. It really just depends how that game day active looks and those guys, and then how the flow of the game goes with who's going to get the touches. But those guys have been in a healthy competition since the day I got here. So we'll continue that mindset right there, where we got a bunch of good able backs, and if Chris is back in the mix right there, and that that'll sort itself out when the time comes.
Obviously, having that many running backs that are quality running backs can be viewed maybe as a good problem, but Pete was talking about potentially having some issues with the rotation there. Is that something that's played into the running game being inconsistent in the first half, just trying to figure out that pecking order, that rotation with your backs?
Sure. I think it's been a combination of some different things as far as, where we've had instances, for example, the first drive of the second half coming out in the Pittsburgh game where, you're feeling like we're doing a great job running the ball. And I know the backs, that certain backs want to have those rhythms where they can play a little bit more and get that feel. But right now we got a good group of backs that we'll continue to see, who's got the hot hand at different times in the game and try to maximize their ability. But just as a whole in the run game, making sure we're on target and all those backs are getting the same opportunities, each one of their reps to maximize their ability.
Is there anything else beyond maybe the rotation that has contributed to the run numbers not being where you guys want them to be 2 8 weeks?
Yeah, I think really it comes down to, we've had the positive runs. It's the negative runs that have gotten us. We've had, certain stretches where we've been, very efficient running the ball. We're averaging good yards per carry. Our perimeter, jet sweeps have continued to have positive results. And then, we've had these couple, like I know Gerald got one this 2 weeks ago where, as a play within a drive where we end up with a negative play right there. Defensive end makes a nice play on the ball. And to me, that's really where it goes into our mindset of just eliminating negative plays in general and really starting with the run game. It can't just be the, 5 yard, 7 yard, 8 yard runs and then, oh man, we got a -2, -3, because that's going to throw our offensive consistency out of whack. So we want to keep doing a great job of just eliminating those. And even if we're grinding out 2 or 3 or 4 yard runs, those are good things for our offense as a whole.
Chris helpful in maybe a unique way because of how he turns a negative run into a positive run, perhaps better than anyone?
Sure. I just remember back to that first game against the Colts where, there's a couple times where he's hit in the backfield right there, or maybe for a 1 or 2 yard gain. Next thing you know, it's a 4 to 6 yard gain. So, his mindset, his attitude, along with the rest of our backs, just being able to lower their pads. And, if it is a dirty run, just finding that air, finding just enough room to get a couple extra yards every snap, and those little yards accumulate throughout the course of the game.
In Rashad's case, since he's been out for so much time, do you feel like right now he might be pressing a little bit with his runs? It seems like there a few times that he's bounced rather than letting the blocks develop in front of him. Is that just the timing not being out there?
Yeah, I just think, for him, just getting more and more reps, he's the same thing with some of these guys. He had some bad luck in terms of being out with some injuries for some extended time periods, and everyone on the field, all the positions, the more you practice, the better you get. And I think the more he's out there every single day, the more, his feel for the run system and the runs is going to get better every time he's out there.
Anything else, guys?
Yeah, real quick. Could you see this kind of trend of like the split safety thing, like you said, it's getting popular. Could you see that coming maybe like a year ago or 2 years ago?
Yeah, exactly. It started to show itself up around the league. Really for my experience going back to the Super Bowl against the Patriots, or the Lions game that year, Fangio playing against the Fangio defenses in Chicago, and you just see it showing up more and more. Kind of as some of these coaches have spread out throughout the league, and some similar systems now are showing up. Whether it's in both LA teams or in Denver, in now in Green Bay. So it is showing up more and more around the league.
Anticipated cycling back when teams start running. Out of that too,
Yeah, it is a cyclical league, right? So I do believe there's something in the stats right now where the 1 high, 2 high defense around the league as a whole has started to balance out a little more. And I know when you take those things like anything else in the cycles over 4, 5, 6 years, they tend to cycle themselves through. And right now it's our job on offense to keep figuring out how to attack these the best way and being efficient against it.
Thanks, Coach.
All right,
Thank you.
good deal. All right, thank you.